5:15 is the time in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. Right after the show, I'm driving to South Philadelphia, Wells Fargo Center tonight, 8 p.m. puck drop between the Rangers and the Flyers, a Metropolitan Division battle rivalry night in the NHL on a Wednesday night. And someone that knows something, a little bit about this Rangers-Flyers rivalry is the former New York Rangers captain, now does a great job as a color analyst on the radio for the MSG radio network. And that's the great Dave Maloney, who joins us right now for a few minutes to talk some Fly Guys and the New York Rangers. Dave, always appreciate when you could join us. Thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
Well, how are you? Happy New Year and all that good stuff, and looking forward to a Ranger-Flyer game here tonight and in Philly.
Thanks so much. No doubt about it, but real quickly, let's just wrap up what happened last night. And I was shocked that the Rangers gave that effort, and I heard Alain Vigneault after the game talk about how he wasn't pleased with the execution and the preparation. What happened last night with the Rangers?
Well, there's a couple things. As Alain Vigneault off the hop mentioned, I think you have to respect what Buffalo did. Buffalo came hard, and I think what the Rangers saw last night was a distinct difference between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. You go back to before Christmas, and the Rangers got blitzkrieged by both Pittsburgh and Minnesota, and that had to come from behind in Ottawa. Went out and beat a couple of lethargic bottom dwellers in the West, in Arizona and Colorado, and then come back, and now you're playing an Eastern Conference team, and Buffalo went after them right away. And as what emanated from the room after to the admittance of every player, they simply weren't good enough. And on a night-to-night basis, you hope that you're better than not. But the Rangers were not very good last night. Buffalo went after them right away, and it really was a very poor Ranger performance last night against the Sabres.
And Dave, really for the Rangers in this crazy race in the Metropolitan, every game does really matter, because you take a look at Columbus. They just got that one seed in the Metropolitan, and they're on a 16-game win streak. The Flyers, they had a 10-game win streak, and they're sitting at 5th in the conference. So every game does count in this division, and it's been a crazy division to watch as we're approaching the halfway point of the season.
Well, I think from a Rangers standpoint, it'll be very telling tonight. I expect the Flyers to come after them right away. I thought the Flyers did a pretty good job in Anaheim. Got beat by a couple of pretty good goaltenders out there in extra time. Simmons went right after Bieksa right away, and I think that established a little more of the Flyer-type mentality. This is going to be a test for this Ranger team. The Rangers, I haven't heard officially, but I think they will continue to be without Rick Nash. They're out Zibanejad and Buchnevich again, so they have been driven largely up front by the Stepan Zuccarello-Kreider line and Nick Holden on the back end. But after that, the offense, Miller's been a little bit better, but it'll be very, very curious to see, because I think both the Flyers and Columbus play with a bit of a snarl. The Rangers have both those guys, both those opponents, tonight and Saturday before they break for their mandatory 5-day break.
Now, I know AV talks tonight to the media at 6 o'clock, so we're not there yet. Who do you anticipate to be in net tonight for the Rangers?
I think they've got to go back with Lundqvist. I really do. I think they've got to play Lundqvist back. I think they've got to go with him. He, the save percentage was not good last night. I'm not sure, though, that you could have blamed him on any of the goals that he was beaten on. But in the meantime, you do need your goaltender to ultimately make a save. So if my suspicions are they'll probably go back with Lundqvist.
Dave Maloney with us right now, the former Rangers captain, does a great job as their color analyst on the MSG radio network. Rangers and Flyers tonight. 8 p.m. is puck drop at the Wells Fargo Center. You take a look at the Rangers, 40 games in onto the season. They sit at 26-13-1, and I think that was a little bit better than most people expected going into this year for the Rangers. Just how do you evaluate this first 40 games of the season for the Rangers?
Well, I think you have to evaluate it quite well. They had a remake over the summertime with how they wanted to present themselves as a team, given how badly they got beat by the Stanley Cup champion Penguins last spring. And I think, by and large, healthy, they were able to do that. I think what happened is, like every team, injuries become a factor. And from the Rangers' standpoint, but for Lundqvist, I think he could make the case that I'm not sure they have dominant performers. Nash has had a good season. McDonough's had a good season. But I'm not sure you'd put either in the Crosby, Letang, category where you can get your top guys to drive the bus. That being said, they, healthy, are a real good sum of their parts. So, at the halfway pole, that'll be, after tonight, they'll have 41 games under the belt. I think you take your 53 points or 55 points and go from there. But now, it gets down the stretch. You're going to be playing a lot of Eastern Conference teams. I think the second half will be very telling. It'll be an interesting watch to see how this team comes along with the very competitive Metro Conference.
You take a look at the Rangers, we know they're battle-tested. They've been competing for a cup for the last few years and got to that Stanley Cup final, got to an Eastern Conference final. We know they have the guys to make a run at this, and we'll see if it's good enough when you get into the later part of the year, April, May, and June, if the Rangers are still playing. Just give me a little bit of perspective since you're with the team on a daily basis, some of the guys on the ice that have really impressed you so far this year, Dave.
Well, I think McDonough's been impressive. He was part of the World Cup team for the America. He's been a pretty good player. But I think the best guy game in, game out has been Zuccarello. He doesn't probably get enough notoriety for how good he is on a night-to-night basis. Kreider it looks like Kreider is just about taking the next step, but the jury's still out on Chris Kreider for an extended period of time. Can he be the dominant player that he's been the last 5 or 6 games? Derek Stepan had a sluggish start. He's been better, but I think and when Nash has been healthy, he's been good. Both Jimmy Vesey, of course, surprised free agent signing in the off season. He's going to have his peaks and valleys. This is a pro life, a pro schedule. I think the next step for him is to get NHL strong. I would like to see Bushnevich over the course of a season. He's probably in the same boat. I'm not sure he's NHL strength yet. So I think from a Rangers standpoint, not so much unlike when they did get to the finals against LA. They really need everybody pulling their weight. I just am not convinced they have the top-end talent of the Stanley Cup champions to rely on 2 or 3 or 4 guys to drive the ship.
You take a look at the opponent tonight. They have that mix of veterans and then also youngsters, and it's still a building process for Dave Haxtell and Ron Hextall. And they made the playoffs last year, lost to Washington in the first round. Right now they're having the 8th seed in the conference, and they have a 3-point lead over Toronto. Just when you take a look at what the Flyers are building, what are some things that stand out to you on paper with this Flyers team?
This is a franchise that's heading in the right direction. As evidence, the World Juniors championships that are taking place in Canada now, they have 9 kids on various rosters there. They're unbelievably deep in the back end. The guy who's a bit of an afterthought, who was at this time last year the talk of the league, was Gostisbehere. He's taking a little bit of a back seat to Prokhorov and connecting up front. I like the way they play. If they can play with a little discipline and get some goaltending, consistent goaltending, I think the Flyers are heading in the right direction. I really do. You get Couturier slotted in. It looks like Schen's going to go in the middle tonight. You get Couturier slotted in the 3rd rotation in the middle. That center ice position is in pretty good shape. And if you believe you got to build down the middle and on the blue line, the Flyers, I like the Flyers. Now, again, I haven't seen enough of them in the last 7 games. I think they're 1-4-2 to know what goes wrong when they're not playing right. But boy, oh boy, on paper, they are a formidable Metro Conference team, and I do like when they play with an attitude. They're a worthy playoff team.
Dave, what do you think decides the game tonight between the Rangers and the Flyers?
Well, I think the Rangers have to expect that the Flyers are going to come after them, and can they? I think sometimes the Ranger team gets a little bit guilty of being a nice, conservative, button-down, go-about-their-business team. And I think tonight you have to kind of dip into the emotional well. And coming off a back-to-back night, a night where there was the absence of emotion and commitment to do the little things that you need to do were absent against the Sabre team. I think this sets up to be 3 periods of 6 periods against 2 very, very good Metro Conference teams in the Flyers and Columbus on Saturday. Henrik Lundqvist needs to make a save when a save is called for, and for the Rangers, it will always be all hands on deck. And if there's not an emotional commitment, and if there's not all hands on deck, and the goalie doesn't make the save when they need it to be made, the Rangers will struggle against the Flyers.
You know it's going to be a raucous atmosphere tonight in the Wells Fargo Center. Back when you were a player, it was the Spectrum. Just what do you remember about your playing days going into Philadelphia? I know that you never were a fan of the Flyers, Dave, to say the least.
Well, it was an intimidating place. The Spectrum was. They were intimidating teams. It was an intimidating crowd. The crowd right on top of the ice surface. You know, it was dark and it was angry. It was not my most favorite place to play. I have to be honest. You had to be on your toes, and you know what? That was the Flyers' culture. It was in their DNA right from the get-go. The game has changed a lot since those days of the Flyers, but you still have to play with an edge, and you still have to play emotionally. And I don't think that building is quite as conducive to that atmosphere that was there at the Spectrum. So that takes a little bit of the bite out of the building. But, boy, oh, boy, there were times, and, of course, you know, in our run in 79, we came from behind in the series, lost the opening game, and really our goaltenders were a little bit better than the Flyers' goaltenders, and we were a little bit quicker. And I think the same thing in the Herb Brooks, the run where we beat the Flyers, but we probably didn't have any business beating the Flyers in the early round. It was always we were a little quicker, a little more skilled, and our goaltending was better. And I would like to say it was fun, but it wasn't a whole lot of fun. You had to go find a way to get it done, and that's what you did.
Now, how'd you guys prepare for that physicality that the Flyers had?
Well, the thing is, when it comes, I don't think it's any different now, Zach. When it comes to the extended season and the playoff times, you just have to find a way. During the regular season, it was a little different. You know, you're one in and you're one out, and it's a longer grind. There's not as much light at the end of the tunnel. So you just, at the end of the day, you have to find a way to persevere. And like I said, we were 2 distinctly different teams when we enjoyed our success. We were pretty well coached both times, playing for Fred Shiro and Herb Brooks. And, it's funny, I talk about Henrik Lundqvist having to make a save. And really, in those successes that we had against the Flyers, probably the key was the ability to kind of grin and bear it and then have your goaltender make a save.
Dave, before we let you run, as Dave Maloney joins us right now, just since you mentioned Herb Brooks, obviously everyone knows him and he's synonymous for the run that he went on with USA Hockey, and the movie was just absolutely great with Miracle as someone that wasn't able to be around for that time period in hockey. Just what was your biggest takeaway from your interactions with him?
Well, I think the greatest thing, it's like any great coach, you probably don't appreciate him as much at the time as you would shortly thereafter. And it was his demanding that you be as good as you could be. And I think I finished my career with Scotty Bowman, but I really didn't play for Scotty long enough to kind of develop that sort of relationship or respect or understanding. But with Herb, he was very demanding, there's no question. And as 27, 28, 29, when you think you know it all, sometimes you didn't quite have the same amount of respect for what he was expecting from you as you would as time went on. But I do think that anybody that wins in the league or anywhere probably is the result of a coach or a boss who's just demanding you be good. And that was conditioning, it was nutrition, it was how to play the game. It was funny, I was talking to Brady Shea, the young defenseman for the Rangers the other day in the room, and he's a Minnesotan kid, went to the University of Minnesota. We got to talking about her. And, my observation from being at practices and stuff now, what they're doing on ice at practice, really quick, high-paced practices, skilled practices, that was a Herb Brooks practice in the early 80s. So he was way ahead of his time in a lot of things about the game. And I will repeat it one more time. He expected you to be good, and he demanded you be good. And I had the privilege and honor of playing for him for 4 years.
It's my favorite movie scene of all time when he has the guys skating and he just keeps on blowing that whistle again and again and again. And I'm sure you probably knew what it was like to be a part of some of those practices.
Well, the thing was, he had mandatory, they were called blowouts, and they were aerobic skates, and they were probably every 2 weeks. And it's funny, when Herb passed, he was, I think a lot of us never thought he'd pass the way he passed. I think we would probably, at the height of those blowout skates, would hope he'd pass on the end of his whistle. But it's funny because, but it was so, again, it was so important in the times when the thoughts on how to play were such that conditioning became a bigger part, and just the way he played. So, yes, I was part and parcel to a numerous of those skates, but I'll tell you, I don't think I enjoyed them, but in the long run, I was a much better player and enjoyed my best production of my career playing for Herb Brooks.
Well, Dave, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. We'll see you tonight. Thanks so much, Dave.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Be good. Thanks for calling.